Welcome, everybody, to the session on Boosting Frontier Research, Europe's Next Move. Welcome in the room, fortunately not 1,000, but it's good to see the room is packed, and welcome to everyone online. My name is Maria Leptin, and I'm the president of the European Research Council. And I would like to begin by welcoming on stage our distinguished speakers. The first one is Alain Aspect. Alain, please join me here. Alain is a physicist, and he works on entangled photons. Now, since the last 2 years, some of us have heard that term, but I guess most of us don't really get our heads around it. It's one of those profound physical concepts that most of us find hard to understand, and therefore Alain might be what could be seen as the archetypal ivory tower scientist. He's won many prizes. We'll get to it. He's won many prizes, including the Nobel Prize a couple of years ago. But it turns out that the results of his ivory tower thinking are terribly important for what politicians and we all as citizens care about in terms of usefulness for society and our well-being and prosperity. So he's just right for our session today. And I'm sure we'll hear about that from him. Next is Patrick Hetzel, Minister of Higher Education and Research in France. Patrick's academic background is in business studies, and while he's been active in academia, he's also been busy in politics for some time and has been appointed minister only about 6 weeks ago. So we're extremely pleased to have you here. And Patrick, I'm very glad to point out to everyone that in your position in politics, it's really good to have seen you be such an avid and active defender of research budgets. Also coming from Alsace, Patrick is an active promoter of German-French friendship, which makes him particularly welcome here. And would have made it particularly apt had he sat next to our next speaker, who's unfortunately had to pull out, and that is Bettina Stark-Watzinger, German Minister for Research and Education and Science, who stepped down after the problems in the German government earlier this week. So too bad we don't have Bettina here. So the next one to welcome here is Marie-Noëlle Semeria. She's Senior Vice President of Research and Development at Total Energies, or Total or Total, depending on how you call it. Marie-Noëlle is also, she's certainly a scientist at heart, as I've discovered in my preparatory conversations with her, with a background in physics, solid-state physics. So another scientist at the helm of a great big company. And then we have Jana Havlikova from Prague. Jana, here she comes. Jana is Deputy Minister of Science, Research and Innovation of the Czech Republic. Her own academic interest, again, another academic here, was in history and languages. She has strong interactions with Berlin, is personally involved in working on protecting democratic principles and human rights, is also interested in war and the like. So I'm hoping that that interest will not become more important in the next few years. But she's also taken on a wide interest of scientific interests throughout her career in government. And finally, we have Andrzej Stepczycki from Warsaw. Andrzej is the Deputy Minister for Science and Higher Education in Poland. He's a political scientist by training, university professor at the Faculty of Political Science and at the University of Warsaw. And I've had the great pleasure of talking science and politics to him. Again, a very avid defender of fundamental research as well as applied research. So I think we can sit down. We don't have to stand throughout this. We have some 30 minutes for our discussion, and then we will take questions from the audience. And I just learned that not all 5 of you have been alerted to the fact that at the end of our session, you'll be asked the question, what is the next step to have to break down the wall to boost frontier science and European competitiveness? So during our discussion, remember to prepare for that 30-second statement at the end. So after having called the speakers on stage, I would like to thank Falling Walls for having helped us assemble this illustrious panel here to talk about frontier research at such a critical time for Europe and the world. I assume that many of you, like me, are still reeling from the recent political events on this side of the Atlantic and the other side of the Atlantic. So I can understand if people say, why the heck are we talking about frontier research today? Isn't frontier research, fundamental research, something that only pays off in 20 years? And do we really have the luxury of supporting this kind of research when faced with such urgent crises? But I believe that frontier research is actually one of the most relevant subjects that we can talk about today. In September, we saw the publication of the widely anticipated report on the future of European competitiveness by former European Central Bank President Mario Draghi. The report showed that a wide gap in GDP has opened up between the EU and the US, driven mainly by slower productivity of growth in Europe. And more precisely, the EU is weak in the emerging technologies that will drive future growth. So we're great at building cars, we're good in pharma, but future technologies are lagging behind. In fact, only 4 of the world's top 50 tech companies are European. What this means is that Europe's relative position in the world is declining. And if this trend continues, we will be faced with very difficult choices. And I think especially now, we really cannot afford that. We should be leading now. So let me quote Draghi. He says, if Europe cannot become more productive, we will be forced to choose. We will not be able to become at once a leader in new technologies, a beacon of climate responsibility, and independent player on the world stage. We will not be able to finance our social model. We will have to scale back, if not at all, some of our ambitions. This is an existential challenge. So how can we become more productive? Again, Draghi has some of the answers. He says, first and most importantly, Europe must profoundly refocus its collective efforts on closing the innovation gap with the US and China, especially in advanced technologies. He's brutal. He says, Europe is stuck in a static industrial structure with few new companies rising up to disrupt existing industry or develop new growth engines. And this is, of course, where support for frontier research can play a decisive role. Frontier research is research that pushes the limits of our understanding, typically driven by curiosity. We have a prime example here, and the desire to explore unanswered questions. I think I'll skip to the end of my little introduction. Many of you will be aware, I hope, that the European Commission is currently preparing the next long-term EU budget for the period 2028 to 34. The proposal is due next year, and the great news is that the President of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, has committed herself in her political guidelines, and this has never been said in political guidelines before, so she's committed herself to putting research and innovation at the heart of the economy and has promised to expand the ERC, which funds fundamental science, in her new term of office. So this is really a very apt time to talking about the subject today. So this will, of course, also require the support of EU member states and the Parliament. So I'm extremely delighted to have 3 ministers here and a representative of the fundamental science and of top technology. So much for the introduction. Now, let's start with where I believe everything starts, with fundamental science. Alain, you as having contributed to the foundation of a new era of quantum technology, how do you see the role of fundamental research, which I should put in a plug? Let's be clear, fundamental research is not only about innovation, it is also about simply enjoying curiosity and finding new stuff, breaking boundaries. But we're talking about innovation here. So how do you see the role of fundamental research from the scientist's view for innovation?
Well, thank you for asking this question, which is dear to my heart, because I had, unfortunately, a very long life, and I have the opportunity to evolve from fully basic research to, at some point, being involved even in a very successful deep tech startup on quantum computing. And the transition was really progressive. When I was young, we heard that you are doing basic science, you are not going to get dirty hands in applications. And we had a minister of research and industry, Laurent Fabius at one point, and he explained to the researcher that we better think about applications, because if applications are successful, then there is taxes on it, and with the taxes, it can fund better research. And so I began to think about it, and during all my career, I explained my collaborators, I have always been doing basic research, but I explained my collaborator, if you have a good idea, it's not getting dirty hands, it's a good idea to go and found a startup company, etc. And as a result, when the fruits, I would say, of the kind of research I have been doing long ago became evident and people started to think about application of entanglement in quantum technology, they naturally came to me and say, this is what we want to do. Do you still encourage us? Well, encouraging means give some money, okay? But I say, yes, certainly. And this is how I am involved in this deep tech startup, several of them, okay? And my experience, well, I happen to be very interested in the history of science, and especially of quantum physics. And I can just cite a few dates. Quantum mechanics emerged between 1900 and 1925. In 1925, that was it. We had Schrödinger equation, Heisenberg, formalism, it was set. It took 22 years until we had the first technological application, which was a transistor, 1947, okay? It took another decade to get integrated circuits, which is nothing else than many transistors on the same chip, okay? Now we are in 1958. Then the laser, 1960, and the equations which allow us to understand the laser that I teach to my students, the equations were written by Einstein in 1916, 1-6. And then the laser was invented in 1966. So the discourse is that there is a long way between the basic research and the applications. And you have to understand that, for instance, just to speak of the transistor was not invented by a guy in a garage doing things like that. It was the best physicist of that time doing efforts to understand how transistors propagate in how electrons propagate in semiconductor, and then they got the idea of the transistor, and then, of course, the role of engineers was fantastic to purify silicon, etc., etc. But this long term, and just to finish, the result of transistor, laser, etc., which is Society of Information and Communication, it took another 3 decades. The Society of Information and Communication really developed at the end of the 90s. So you see almost 1 century between the beginning and the end.
Right. Super. Yes. Good. So patience, and I think Jana will be talking about patience. So not a year, not 2 years, but many years, and not
decades.
Decades. Right. Marie-Noëlle, you must be facing that from your perspective a lot. fundamental science and its use in industry. So how do you see it, and how does public investment in frontier research actually support the big industries?
Yeah. Of course, from the industrial point of view, we need to have some new technology, some new concepts, some new proposal demonstrated as a proof of concept. So just to finish the story started by Alain, coming from the idea to the first application, then it's just the beginning of starting from the first demonstration of the application, then accelerating this demonstration, mainly with startups, and then deploying it at the right scale. And it's the role of big companies like Total Energies to consider all the quite ready technology and then to focus on the upscaling and the deployment. So it's key to have this continuous pipeline from the idea to the final application. And remember that when we speak about innovation, we speak about value creation for the citizen. It means that, as Jürgen said at the beginning of the session, we have to think about the added value for the usage of people at a low cost. So I love Alain is speaking about taxes, but no more taxes. Just be focused on the pipeline from the idea to the demonstration and then the deployment. And it's
Right.
key to have not only this technological why, but also the right regulation environment.
I hope we'll get to that, because you've both pointed out what there is, what we need. We'll have to figure out what Europe is not getting right eventually. Jana, what do you consider the main challenges? We've heard from these two what there is, what's needed. What are the main challenges to make use of this? Why is it not happening?
First of all, good morning to everybody. I'm really happy to be here with you. I think, we need to look at all these questions, in a broader context. I think we have to just ask, what's the role of science and research in today's world? Because, this day, the world, seems to be full of uncertainties. It's not stable, secure, and clean enough. So about our future, are we looking forward to it, or are we afraid of it? Want we, to prepare a new, better future for us? Or, we just try to preserve and repair all that we have already? And in this context, it's also about the role of science and research playing now. And maybe, we have to look at the social discourse, because I think it has been changed. Science and research nowadays is no longer something that is automatically accepted without asking questions, without discussions. Maybe we could experience the influence of disinformation and malinformation. Where is the truth? Are there just one truth, or are more truth? Are there alternative ways how to to say what's good, what's wrong? And I think all these questions now we are doubting. We are hesitating, and it has a big impact on research and science itself, because then we need to defend science and research. In terms, as already Alain said, it's usually not a matter of a few years. It's like art. It's a creative activity. And we have to cope with it.
Yes. We clearly have a group of believers around this table, so we're preaching to the choir. Patrick, what, from the political side, do you see as the benefits of frontier research? We've heard a little bit about frontier research itself. We've heard about problems. What are the benefits?
There are, I would say, a lot of benefits. And what we really have to do, you're just mentioning it, we are maybe believers here at this round table, because over time, what came out is, and I started my new position several weeks ago. The first thing I really said is investing into research and higher education should not be seen as a cost, but really as an investment. And you were just mentioning it. The key issue is via research and investing into research, what we're really doing is preparing the future. And what we also have to do is we are in a period where public money is becoming difficult to spend. And so we also have to convince every citizen that investing into research is maybe the best thing we can do for the future, because research will also allow us to find new solutions. We have to deal with main issues like environmental issues, and we have to deal with the growth of the worldwide population. Those populations also need to get food and so on and so forth. And we can really have a kind of positive view about research. And what we have to deal with, and you were also mentioning it a few minutes ago, the European Union is preparing the new program. We have to push very strongly on two things. Make sure that the global level on investment on research will be high enough for Europe. And what we also have to do is work stronger together. Because we do it, and of course here in Berlin, and for example, French-German cooperation in research is quite high. But we need to do more, not only our two countries, but also on a multilateral basis, because what's going to happen in the future is Europe has to be more agile and find new solutions. You were also mentioning some aspects of the Draghi report. Yes, the fact that Draghi says the industrial structure in Europe is static, and at least too static. We have to find solutions, and we have to be also innovative in the ways public research and private research are going to work together and push from fundamental research to innovation. Yes. So a lot of issues in the future, but I'm very positive, because I think that over time we found out that research very often created new opportunities, and so we have to look at the positive aspect of research and science.
Very good. Andrzej, what you did we talk? Yes, we talked the other day, and he said our country made it out of a populist area. Back into twice. So we should be hopeful about the current situation. Yes, let's hope. But how does that relate to the topic?
Well, it does relate to the topic directly, because populists do not like science. They openly base their politics, some of them, on questioning the role of vaccination, the climate change, and so on. So we have external disinformation promoted by some external powers, not to mention Russia directly. And we have also our internal disinformation centers, some populist forces, okay? And once again, what was said, there are several truths, okay? In Poland, I will not hear my colleagues from populist parties openly being anti-vaccination, some of them. But they will say, well, there are several points of view. We have to accept what our citizens, some of them are in favor, some they are against. So me personally, I will not take, a kind of unanimous position. Shall we have our kids vaccinated? No, in an obligatory way. It's up to the parents. So in that context, what do we need, I think, to work on, both to fight the populism, but also to promote science? This is the main question of our meeting today. We need to make science understandable, attractive, and trustworthy for everybody, which basically means promotion, okay? 4 years ago, where we had COVID, everybody was expert on pandemic, but in a good sense, because everybody was interested in what, maybe not us directly, because we are not dealing, with healthcare, okay? But in what our colleagues were doing while trying to protect us from the COVID. And for scientists, it's an ideal situation if everybody is talking about your job, because this means more money, this means more respect, and so on. So what do we need in that context? First, you remember Stephen Hawking, Brief History of Time. His book, which sold, I think, in 25 million copies. So people were reading about black holes, about, why time goes from one side to the other, and so on. This is something we should think about. In Poland, not only in Poland, in Paris, there is also a science museum. We have one in Warsaw, a big one, it's called Copernicus Center, but now we are cloning it, creating some 50 small Copernicus centers in many, smaller cities, just to give adults and kids access to, life experiments they can do to promote science. Last point, probably. Social media. When I joined politics some 2 years ago, one of the first things I was told, you have to be active in the social medias, Facebook, Twitter, and so on. For a politician, I hope you agree, it's normal to be active in social media. For scientists, I would say it's rather an exception. I have some colleagues who are very happy, I'm running a YouTube channel. Great, I'm happy about that. But once again, if somebody, a researcher, puts in his CV, I'm running a YouTube channel, it rather means it's an exception, because most of his colleagues are not. And as in politics, I believe most of researchers should have an account. Doesn't matter if you have 1,000 followers or 100,000 followers, but just say every day what you are doing. Transistors, quantum computers, never mind. Because now, today, especially the young generation, okay, TV is passé. The fact that Daddy was on TV last week, it's passé because my kids don't watch TV. Their colleagues don't watch TV. They are watching Instagram, okay? So their colleagues would report to my kids what I've told on Instagram, not on TV. So that's how we must reach the people, once again, to show them science is attractive, important, understandable, if we can explain quantum computers to to most of the people, and reliable. I think this is a key point, in particular related to populist threat.
Wow, we've heard a bunch of very good topics around the table. Education seems to be a major concern with a view to the future. But we also heard appreciation and knowledge of the value of fundamental science. So that seems to be an agreement. So then, and I'd like to go to Marie-Noëlle for that, what is Europe doing wrong? Why is it that only 4 or 5 out of the top 50 innovative companies are in Europe? And I would like to go back to Alain to say, what about, how should we fund fundamental research? Are we doing it right? And then we'll get back to the three of you commenting on that, and then we'll have questions from the audience. So, Marie-Noëlle, what is Europe doing wrong? Why are our politicians so envious about what's going on with unicorns and startups and you name it in the US? Why can't we do that? Where are the problems?
So I would say that...
You've got 3 ministers here who might help solve them.
Okay. I would say that in Europe, fragmentation is a key issue to develop industry, to develop innovation. If I refer to the American IRA, so Inflation Reduction Act, it's a very simple set of measures. Simple, focus, with tax credits for everybody, for every company, and neutral in terms of choice of technology, so technology agnostic, direct funding for industry in order to help the access to the market and the demonstration of the deployment. And so very clear rule. And of course, industry and manufacturing develop in United States.
Mm-hmm.
In front of us in Europe, it's complex. Every member states are coupled with the European regulatory framework. So we have 27 different frameworks. It's very difficult to deploy. It's very difficult to have a full chain. For example, in energy, we need to provide some biofuel. We need to have access to the feedstock and then the process and then the industry to transform in biofuel. It's a full chain. We can think about the full chain at the European level, but not at the different countries' level. It's too static. The framework is too static in Europe. So I would say that it's a major issue.
I think the reports of Letta and Draghi agree with you on that, and so I think
I agree with them.
Yeah, you. Okay, you agree with them, but I mean, this is so. Very often, we're told that it's the fault of the universities who don't support innovation, or that there's not enough funding for that transition. But you're saying it's a major structural problem: red tape and fragmentation, and that's of course where the European countries now more than ever will have to pull together. So I will be interested to hear your views, but let's again go to the fundamental scientist. What about funding the actual initial science?
Well,
Is that working well?
Well, it depends. Is it working? My mic is working?
No.
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no, it's not working.
People are nodding.
My mic, yes? Okay.
Hmm.
We have to distinguish between funding of individual and more general funding. Funding to individual is beautifully done by ERC. I benefited of a ERC grant, and then I was in the panel, and I think the way ERC works is wonderful, because it's only a matter of quality of the application. There is no geographical consideration. There should be a share for each country or something like that. It's purely quality of the research, and not only quality of the research, but revolutionary character of the project. You know, high risk, high potential gain. This was the motto when I was in the panel. So I think from this point of view, it works well, provided that the Commission continues to give enough money to ERC and increase it, because the problem when I was in the panel was that we had too many excellent propositions and proposals, and we could only fund a part of them. But there is a real issue, I think, which was really raised by Marie. Okay, the fragmentation. Even in Europe, we tend to feel the other as competitors. And there is one way out of that, one way that I experienced with Jürgen Mlinek. In 1992, we started one of the first European network. And the fact that we built a network, I have to be frank, just to get the money. But once you have the money, you learn how to work together. So I think that in addition to the standard individual ERC grant that we have to keep, there is no doubt, we should emphasize the synergy projects, but synergy project mixing several people in several countries. Because you don't need a lot of incitation, but if there is nothing to tell you, okay, if you do something in cooperation with your colleague, then you will get more money. If you don't have that, it's less natural. But as soon as you begin to meet the people, because you have to write an application, you have to write a report, etc., then the cooperation comes by itself. So I would really encourage that, for instance, in ERC.
Yes, okay.
To really be sure that the synergy is something that helps to have collaboration between the various countries.
Very good. So again, more working together and not the competition between the countries.
Just to give an example, I am deeply convinced quantum computer is not yet there, okay? We have not perfect quantum computer. We are all convinced that quantum computer will be here only if everybody collaborates. It's so difficult.
Yes.
There are so many obstacles. If we don't collaborate, we will not.
So actually, this is interesting. So it's pulling together. We have one example in Europe where that worked, and that's Airbus. There, Europe managed to pull together, and look what we did. It's extremely competitive. Now, Boeing screwing up so much, of course, helped us, but we first got all countries together to build Airbus. So I think it's interesting to hear from both of you that we need more of that. And I think that's where we can go back to the politicians. Patrick, what do you say? What do we do to cure this? And you're from a very powerful country, so what are you going to tell Europe they must do? And what is your government going to do to stop this competition?
My government will also go in a very simple direction, which is to say we have, of course, we just mentioned the fact that, and the Draghi report was mentioning the fact that we have some structural and organizational problems we have to solve. So, of course, we have to go further to facilitate the cooperation. But what we also have to do is, and you were just mentioning we also have to take into consideration the fact that things changed over the decades. We have new countries investing a lot in research, for example, China.
Yes.
And so what's also important in the future is the level of investment we will be able to achieve for research within Europe. And that's a global issue. And if the level of investment is not high enough, we won't be able to deal with some of the future challenges. I give you just one single example. Artificial intelligence. This is maybe one area where France is still quite strong because of our mathematicians and so on and so forth. But what we need in the future is a high level of investment, making sure that we will be able to stay in the worldwide competition. Yes. And that needs also a kind of global acceptance of all of us.
Yes.
We need to work together. Our Prime Minister in France a few weeks ago said, Europe is now a necessity. And I really believe in the fact that we need more Europe, more cooperation within Europe, because that will allow us to keep this high level of research we had in the past, and that we need to develop in new areas like digitalization, like artificial intelligence, and so forth, and so on.
Excellent. Good. 1 minute each for the two of you, so that we have a little time for audience questions. Jana.
So for for me, I think just a few short comments. Maybe we are a little bit afraid of facing risk, and maybe this is one of the barriers we have to break. It's everything about high risk experiments, long-term visions and things like this. Maybe we could also talk about problem-oriented short-term research and long-term open-ended research. It could be maybe okay. And then, for me, I would say people first.
Mhm.
So it's about talent cultivation and supporting excellence, so that we, could create, I would say, a system of trust and excellence. It's everything about international cooperation, mobilities, appropriate joint and double study programs, things like this. Then, about sharing infrastructure. It's about all these research facilities, about, exchange of knowledge and sharing this, but on the level of equal access and reciprocity, because it's also very important for all member states, not just
We have
only,
to-
the Europe. And then, yes, the technologies, we have to, look at it.
Andre?
Well, I think it's not only about collaboration, everybody basically agreed on that, but also in a way about integration. Okay,
Yes.
we have bilateral projects where between
Yes.
Poland and Germany we have excellent scientific Dioscuri centers, but we have also some common European institutions already, the ERC, but also the European University Institute in Florence, very important, excellent center of research and of education. And speaking about education, we have already some elevations of integration, some common standards, okay? Bologna process, now the idea of the European diploma. So in that area, we see some steps towards, going from voluntary collaboration to some common standards.
Yes.
In the field of research, I would say we have the European universities, which is also a good idea. However, it is more, local, because it does not involve everybody. It involves only those universities which successfully applied to getting the European universities. But I think this is the path we should take. Not only voluntary collaboration, but creating mechanisms to promote or even to force this cooperation, like with the European diploma on the education level. Because just one sentence, in some areas, EU did have considerable successes. Which areas? Common agricultural policy, for example, and cohesion policy. Why? Because there was money. And there was deep involvement of EU in that particular area. If you pull together these two factors, money and the large EU competencies, this gives major results. And I think that's what we need.
Okay. So what I hear is pulling together, getting rid of fragmentation. I hear there are many good ideas. In many cases, the ideas are great, but the implementation isn't working. So we do actually not have very good common degrees, very good mobility. The European research area is a great idea. We're still waiting for it to be realized. So we're hoping that the politicians will pull together better now to face the challenges, that an AI institute or whatever is planned will not fail because of competition between countries, but will succeed through collaboration. So, Jürgen, can we do 5 minutes over? Whether we can or not, I'll wait for the answer. For the moment, I'll take questions. A little bit. Okay, I see one over here and one over there. We'll try and get the sex ratio of questioners right. Okay, please, and one sentence of who you are and brief question. And not long comments. No, this gentleman. Thank you.
Hi, Tim Hubbard, Director of Elixir, the Pan-European Research Infrastructure. Okay, I meant to stand up.
Very good, yes.
So you mentioned structural barriers to research and needing to make universities more organized, but what about other barriers? There's obviously data. My organization coordinates data across Europe, but things like AI, the literature is too big for scientists to grasp, but AI can read it all. If there weren't barriers, only 50% is open access. You could, at the policy level, make a change to ensure that AI could read all the literature, and then scientists would be able to use those LLMs across. But that requires a policy change. So what about that?
Well, as you know, the EU policy is open access publication and huge encouragement of open. But again, it's the implementation that's often a problem. Does anybody want one quick answer other than this one? country level, open access to data. It's an uphill struggle. I mean, we'll chat about it later. Liddy.
So I would like to bring a perspective of a young scientist. I am a PhD student at Uppsala University, working in the context of all solid-state batteries.
Great.
So you started with a question how we can become more productive. And I would like to raise a point that it's difficult to be productive and creative and produce quality research when fighting for basic survival. And I'm talking here about living from a grant to a grant proposal. And I'm not yet at this stage since I'm a PhD student, but I see my supervisors, my colleagues doing that. Mm-hmm. Patrick raised the point that we need to invest in research. I want to argue that it's important how we invest in research because it shapes the scientific ecosystem. And I want to work in an ecosystem where I can focus on producing reliable science. Mm-hmm. That can tackle societal challenges. And one more point here to Alain. You were talking about about ERC, that it's beautifully done. I think it's well done for established researchers, but for people who just start, you still don't have yet a base, and you need space to be creative and think. So. I would like to hear your perspectives on that.
Okay, I think I'll take that one. So the plea from yes, very good. See, you get a lot of support. So the plea from the young researchers about scientific careers in Europe and the world is justified. It's not so much the topic of this discussion, but it has to be tackled. It's also part of the European the European research area. It's a difficult one. The ERC, because this was a specific question about the ERC, does fund starting researchers, starting independent research. It doesn't fund postdocs and graduate students. That's the Marie Curie actions. One might say there should be a little more bottom-up selection, but it's actually a good program for that level. The ERC starts at 2 years after a PhD, and in fact, we're looking at being even sooner. But these people get absolute and complete independence. So I think the ERC does that.
Can
the
I
careers, yes, please,
Alain.
Alain.
She asked me.
She asked you, yes.
Starting
exactly.
grant. I have plenty of examples around me of young researchers who got a starting grant, and the interest of the starting grant is to get rid of
control
of
from
a boss.
above. Yes, exactly, to get you independent of a boss. But again, I'll be happy to talk to you afterwards, and I'm sure the rest of the panel will be too. Take one or two more questions. One, actually. Whoever raises there's somebody. Yes? Okay, please. Make it a question, please. Yes? Oh, sorry. Yeah, okay.
Hi, I am Fabiana Dapier from the European Commission, DG Connect. What Alain said at a certain point was very important about the development of quantum computers, and we will not make it if we act alone. But we will not make it even if we do not synergize enough between the different funding schemes. So we need to find the way to interact those ERC winners or applicants together more with the quantum flagship and other initiatives that are dedicated funded by other funding programs to quantum communication. So we need to design some new synergy initiatives, and we are thinking about that at the Commission.
Very good point, and which goes along with, I've just been told we have to stop the answers, so Alain will have to respond to you directly after the session. This brings me to our last one-sentence round. What is the wall that has to be broken down, that has to fall in order for Europe to do better, to go from frontier research to innovation? Just around the table, one sentence. What's the wall that has to come down?
There is a rising wall that some young people see is a wall saying that research is responsible for the problem of the planet, and we have really to tell them that science is the solution to the problem of the planet.
Good.
This is a word
Great.
to put.
Great. Wonderful. Patrick, this will be hard to beat.
What we also have to do is to develop this real culture, and you were talking about it a few minutes ago, culture of risk taking. And this culture of risk is the basic thing we have to bring very deeply in the European culture, because without taking risks, no research.
I send that question back to the government, because the scientists who want to take the risks are there and ready to take them. Okay, Jana.
So I think the biggest wall is located in our minds. So we have to start with our attitude and with our with all measures we would like to take. So we have to start with ourselves.
With ourselves, great. Yes, Andrzej.
We have to have, instead of 27 states, we have to have one Europe in the field of science. And this will bring us forward.
Yeah. I will say we have a single currency, so just have a single market. And decarbonization and energy is a huge opportunity to innovate and to put Europe again in the race.
Fantastic, fantastic. European politicians who are online or in the room, you've got the recipes here. Now just make them work. So thank you very much to the speakers, to the questioners. Sorry we didn't have more time, but the speakers are here.